The arakara normal, heroic, and mythic guide. Very quickly going to describe how this guide is set up. The video is split into chapters for each boss. You can find them down below. The first chapter will describe the trash on the way to the boss, focusing on target priority and important abilities. The second chapter covers the boss mechanics and each of their abilities, and the third chapter will be role-specific duties. Mythic normally adds one extra mechanic, and it will be listed right before the role duties. Avanox's trash. In order to summon the first boss, there are 3 mini-bosses that must be defeated, and they are marked by circles on your map. I'll cover all the trash and then break down the mini-bosses. Attendants are the top priority mob to kill. They use Web Bolt, which is interruptible. This targets random players and slows them for 5 seconds. Resonant Barrage is a channeled ability that will deal heavy damage to the entire party every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. Crawlers use Venomous Spit, which will apply a poison dot to a random player. Near 20% health, they will use Toxic Rupture. A ring will appear around them, and they will pursue a player, most likely the tank. Their movement is drastically slowed, and once the cast is complete, they explode, dealing damage to any player inside and knocking them back. Jabbing Flyers will apply a stacking bleed debuff to the tank, just be aware of the stack count. Crawlers are non-elites and just auto-attack. The first mini-boss, Ixen. Horrifying Shrill is and must be interrupted. This deals big damage and fears everyone for 6 seconds. It also summons additional ads that must be killed. Web Spray is a large frontal cone attack and will leave webbing on the ground, marked by swirlies. Web Bolt is the last attack, and this is only tank related. The second mini-boss, Nact. Nact also uses Web Bolt and Web Spray. Call of the Brood is a channeled ability. This will deal damage to the party and summon crawlers. The third mini-boss, Atik. Web Spray is also present here. Poison Bolt is tank related and will leave a poison dot on the tank. Poisonous Cloud is marked by a green swirly. This leaves a poison cloud behind that deals damage to anyone that's inside. Avanox. This fight is all about ad management. Gossamer Onslaught. This hits all party members and deals damage every second for 5 seconds. Every second, it also marks the ground with swirlies, which need to be sidestepped. Each location hit leaves behind a webbing on the floor. This webbing applies a stacking debuff that slows and deals damage to the player. If this debuff stack reaches 10, that player will be encased in webbing for 10 seconds. Alerting Shrill deals damage to all players over 3 seconds and summons crawlers. These crawlers will fixate a random player and obtain a stacking buff called Hunger. This increases their damage by 10% every 3 seconds. Kite and kill them. Voracious Bite is the tank buster. This is a 3 heavy hitting attack back to back. On the third bite, it applies a debuff that increases damage taken by 50% for the next 10 seconds. Mythic only. Do not allow any of the crawlers to get close to Avanox. If they are consumed by the boss gains a stacking buff called Insatiable. This increases its damage done by 50% for 60 seconds. Role-specific duties. Tanks. Use a defensive for Voracious Bite. Healers. Expect party damage during Gossamer Onslaught and Alerting Shrill. DPS. Utilize crowd control on the crawlers. They are the priority. Watch your feet. A mythic note. Keep the boss away from the crawlers. Anubzic's trash. Sentry Stag Shells are the absolute top priority here. If they complete their alarm shrill, they will summon an additional blood guard and alert all enemies within 50 yards to the fight. Web Mages are a top priority in terms of interrupts. Revolting Volley deals heavy damage to the party and applies the healing absorb. They also use Web Bolt, which will deal single target damage. Assistants are next as they use Extraction Strike. This will hit the tank and heal them for their damage done. This will also buff them, increasing their damage and healing done by 10% for the next 10 seconds. This can stack. Blood Guards use Massive Slam. This deals party-wide damage and stuns all players for 1 second. Impale is a frontal attack marked by large swirlies, avoid or be knocked backwards. Blood Workers are present here and they only use auto attacks. Anubzic. This is a high movement fight. Infestation. This marks a random player and causes them to take damage over the next 5 seconds. Once it expires, it summons a swarm, which will move around the arena marked by a blue circle. Players inside the circle take damage and it applies a stacking bleed and movement reduction debuff. Burrow Charge will target the furthest away player, marked by a red arrow. The boss will drop under the ground and travel through them. This damages and knocks back all players in its path. Impale is aimed at the tank. This is marked by 3 rows of swirlies that travel in one direction. The boss will use this throughout the fight, but also immediately after a Burrow Charge, so keep that in mind. Eye of the Swarm is the boss's ultimate attack. This consumes the arena in a swarm aside from the circle near the boss. Stay inside the circle and rotate around with it. While inside the circle, swarms will continue to move around and the boss will constantly use Impale. Mythic only. Web Mages will be summoned throughout this fight. They need to be quickly stunned, interrupted, and killed as they will wrap players up in webbing. Players wrapped will suffer extra damage and they need to be broken free. Role-specific duties. Tanks. Keep the boss facing away from the party as much as possible. Healers. Infestation deals quick damage to players. Players targeted with charge will take a large chunk of damage. DPS. Watch out for the swarms. Use a defensive if you're targeted with charge. A mythic note. Mages are the top priority. Interrupt, stun, and kill. The Harvester's trash. Blood Overseers are the top priority here. Their Venom Volley will hit and poison all party members if not interrupted. They also use Erupting Webs, which marks the ground with swirlies. Haulers use Massive Slam. This deals party damage and stuns everyone for 1 second. With every cast, they also buff themselves with Intensity. This stacks and increases their damage done by 10%. Drones will use Grasping Slash on the tanks. This deals damage and applies a stacking debuff that reduces movement speed. Carriers are the last mob. They drop Grasping Blood, which will root players and deal damage. Kikatao the Harvester. The main thing here is avoiding the pools until the boss's ultimate. Blood workers will constantly be running around the arena. When damaged, they drop Grasping Blood on the ground. This roots players and deals damage until destroyed. Venom Volley hits all players, reducing their movement speed and applies a 10-second dot that takes damage every 2 seconds. Erupting Webs will mark the arena with multiple swirlies. Players hit will be stunned for 6 seconds. Cosmic Singularity is the boss's ultimate. Any players inside the ring at the end of the channel will take heavy damage and be knocked away. This also adds a Faded debuff, which reduces your damage done by 75% and increases damage taken by 25% for the next 12 seconds. While channeling this ability, it will pull players inside. In order to avoid being pulled inside, players should utilize the Grasping Blood pools. Mythic only. Venom Volley is replaced by Cultivated Poisons. This is the same, however, once it is removed, it will send out poison waves, which also need to be avoided. Another difference is that the Grasping Blood can only be used by one player. Each player needs to use their own pool to avoid the ultimate. Role-specific duties. Tanks. Watch out for the pools as you move the boss. Keep the boss away from the pools before its ultimate. Healers. Expect constant party damage with Venom Volley. DPS. Damage some of the blood workers to drop pools around the outside of the arena. Mythic note. Only one player can use each pool. Be sure there are plenty around. That's it for the arakara dungeon. Shout out to these channel members. If this video helped, then press a thumbs up. Subscribe if you enjoy WoW content. I have plenty of guides, tips and tricks, podcasts, and more. You can show extra support by becoming a channel member. It's 99 cents a month and gives you early ad-free access to all my videos. I'll see you in the next one.